Viewers, subscribers, welcome back to the Coach's Desk. I'm your host, Coach Lindsay, and we are here to talk to former assistant coach of the Reggae Boyz, the junior team, Andrew Edwards, an astute coach who is all the way over in that section of the Caribbean. I'm just going to leave him to talk about that. But before we get into this interview, I must say a big thank you to all the viewers and the subscribers who would have taken the time out just to view this video. You know what I mean? Thanks very much. We appreciate you. Big up to all the persons from the Erudite Squad. Really, really appreciate you. We appreciate you in so much that we're asking you to hit the like button so that this video can go a far way. Andrew Edwards, welcome to the Coach's Desk.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It's a pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you and the viewers out there. And hopefully we can have a conversation that will enlighten others and, be of value to the nation's football.
Definitely. And we really appreciate you for taking the time out to stop by on the Coach's Desk. But for persons who don't know who is Andrew Edwards, could you briefly introduce yourself to the viewers out there?
Andrew Edwards, teacher by training, got into coaching officially for the first time in 1996. Took a break when I went to university, and then I've been involved with coaching ever since 2001 when I got back home. Started as the head coach at my alma mater, Titchfield High School in Portland. Got to the D'Costa Cup finals in 2003 where we lost 1-0 to Frome Technical. And then from there, I transitioned to St. Elizabeth Technical High School, won the D'Costa Cup, a couple of Ben Francis titles, a number of under-16 championships, both at Titchfield and States. And then in 2010, I was appointed as assistant coach to the national team, Mr. Downser, as the coach. So I did that campaign for 2011 World Cup qualifiers. We didn't get through. And then I was with the program again in 2012, going for 2013. And I was asked to leave. And then in 2014, I was brought back as the head coach for the under 17 team, a position I held until August of 2017. After that job, I went back to the school ball, and now I am currently in the Turks and Caicos Islands as technical director of football here.
Okay, congrats on that position there of technical director. So coach, you have been around. You won titles. I guess that you would have lost close ones. And do you think that we have a lot of talent here in Jamaica that can go through a very robust development that we can even export players? Because you have been around, you would have seen a lot of youngsters.
I'll answer that question this way. I did my first coaching course back in 1995 when Coach Renee Morris first came to Jamaica. Did it down at Clements Park in St. Mary. And since that time, I have had the good fortune of doing a lot of coaching courses, seminars, workshops, and a lot of those courses and workshops have been led by foreigners, people from Italy, France, Spain, the United States, the United Kingdom. And one thing that they have all said in common as it relates to Jamaican football, and this is particularly so as it relates to when you have those demonstration part of the sessions where you bring kids in to demonstrate what the coach is trying to teach, is that so in love with the Jamaican raw material, as I like to call them, the young players in the ages of 9 and say 14, 15 years old. And I can't remember ever being on those courses where the instructor, being from one of those foreign countries I mentioned before, didn't identify as the player who they thought was very good and good enough to be developed in their environment and become a star player. So in a nutshell, the answer is 100% yes. Jamaica has an abundance of raw material, which is the talent, the football talent, the physical attributes, that if harnessed and owned properly, can become world beaters in their own rights.
All right, you made mention also that's a good answer there. You made mention of you doing a whole lot of courses where coaching education is concerned, and personally, I do believe that that is the X factor that would, unearth the talent, hone them in such a way that they will develop to, be amongst the best in the world. In your estimation, separate and apart from the infrastructural development, whether we're having challenges with field and other possible administrative issues, do you believe that coaches education is one of the greatest deterrent, and how do we foster, how do we improve that going forward?
Well, Kevin, personally, because you're a part of that group, where the sole purpose and the emphasis of that group is further education for coaches. As an educator, naturally, I have a love affair and a bias towards education, because that is what it really and truly empowers. If I were to take away my own personal biases and just look at what the best practices are saying to us, what is it that the France and the Belgium and the Brazil and the England and the Spains of this world, and if we want to come closer to home, the Mexicos and the United States and the Panama, what is it that they are doing that allows them to consistently produce players of a high standard, and also to produce coaches of a high standard? And then you're going to find that invariably we're coming full circle around to the quality and extent of coach education. As a coach educator, I've been doing coach education since 2013, teaching a lot of courses in Trinidad, the British Virgin Islands, Suriname, and now here again in the Turks and Caicos Islands. I was also a coach educator with the JFF, doing a courses there before I left. Coach education is just the big thing, better coach education produces better coaches. Better coaches produces better players. Better players, invariably, we're going to have a better national team. So for me, that has to be like one of, if not the most important pillar that the technical development of our country's football is built upon.
Awesome. But in retrospect, you are one of the as I alluded to earlier, one of the astute coaches from Jamaica. But you're not in Jamaica, helping to groom some of these coaches, because you say you're a coach's educator, but you're not here to assist the process of getting the coaches better. How do you respond to a statement like that?
Oh, well, I'm not so sure exactly what you mean exactly by astute coach. I've been very fortunate, to be properly educated at Teachfield High School, University of the West Indies, College of Agriculture, Science and Education, University of Leipzig in Germany, and of course the JFF coaching school, CONCACAF coaching courses, etc. I've been very fortunate with that, and I invest a lot in my own personal development and personal education. But with all of that said, there are a number of other coaches in Jamaica who are just as brilliant, or even more brilliant, and my great desire is, of course, to be a part of the building process in Jamaica as much as I possibly can. But in the same breath, I have to accept that in this moment, I am not a part of that process, at least not in a formal sense. And I have to bloom where I am planted. And so I'm very happy that the Turks and Caicos Islands recognized in me what qualities I could bring to their table, and have provided me that opportunity. And I think if I were to appraise myself in this moment, I think I've been doing a very good job in the Turks and Caicos Islands. It's a totally different environment from Jamaica, of course, but I think it is development and education for me that is much needed. If and when the opportunity does come and I come back home to Jamaica, then I am better prepared to contribute to that process, But in this moment, I'm just happy to be blooming where I'm planted, and I just want to focus on that while maintaining my passion and my desire for helping my own land.
All right. Since we're over in Turks and Caicos, I want you to give us a little synopsis. You probably don't want to get into details some of the things, but what's your role as the technical director? One, and two, what's it like in terms of working with that sort of talent over there as opposed to when you were in Jamaica?
All right. So the technical director, by FIFA definition, in very simple language, is he who prepares the football of the future. So the technical director is not really concerned with the day-to-day football per se, or the match-to-match per football. It's really about creating a picture for 8, 10, 12 years down the road and putting in place the infrastructure, the systems, the organization, the resources, etc., to create that picture. So one of the things that we know is when you look at a national team like Jamaica, Turks and Caicos, or Spain, France, any one of them, the players you are seeing on the park is really the product, or the final product of the work that would have gone into those players 18 years prior. So when we are thinking about the football from a technical director's perspective, I am projecting 10 years and what Turks and Caicos Islands football can be. And we are operating off a 10-year strategic development plan that was completed in November. We have some real lofty goals, and we are very conscious about our own limitations, but in the same breath, we are very focused and determined to accomplish as many of those goals as we possibly can, or get as close to them as we possibly can. So one of the main limitations the Turks and Caicos has is in terms of the population. The country has a population of somewhere between 40 and 50,000, depending on when and who you get the information from. Of that number, just about 1,200 at most, including administrators and coaches, referees, etc., are involved in the sport of football. And that is being the high end. If we were to stick to the low end, which is probably more practical, especially in this COVID, we're talking about somewhere about 800, 900 people. The other challenge that the Turks and Caicos has is that the population is very fluid. By that I mean that people come and go very often. So a significant percentage of the population is migrant, people from Jamaica, St. Kitts, the Philippines, Venezuela, you name it. And so a lot of these people are the ones who are actually involved in the football. Now that poses two problems. On the one hand, most of them are not eligible to represent the country. On the other hand, a lot of these people, when their contracts expire, they move on, or when other opportunities move on. So the population is very, very fluid, and that creates its own challenge. So to deal with that, one of the things that I did when I came into the job first in 2019 was to analyze the football environment in its entirety. And that process took me about 2-3 months. And then we rolled out a plan. So right now, as we're speaking, we are well underway with one particular aspect of that plan, and that is in terms of the growth and development of the women's game in the Turks and Caicos. So I am currently in Florida with the under-17 team, which has an average age of about 13 years old. to compete in the FIFA Under-17 World Cup qualifiers starting on October 28th. This team we expect will become mature for the next Under-17 World Cup qualifiers in 2 years' time. All right, so this is part of the plan with that. We have established a women's league, high school girls football, indoor women's football. We have had the return of the women's festival, which is a invitational tournament that is held in August each year. That was dormant for about 3 or 4 years before I came, and we have managed to bring that back to life and stuff. So in the long haul, it is the intention of the Caicos Islands Football Association to make a concerted effort at the 20 Men's World Cup. Not necessarily to qualify, but at least to be competitive in the qualifying phase and then continue to build on that. Similarly, on the men's side, we have focused heavily on a group of young men who are now 15 and 15 years old. And we like to always consider them to be our flagship team in terms of what the future of Caicos Islands football is going to be. So it's been a topsy-turvy kind of a ride, but it's a ride that I've been totally enjoying and endearing myself to in the best ways possible.
Right. You made mention of the country being made up of migrants or immigrants. I don't know which one, but do you get a lot of the players from outside of the country, or many of them are homebred?
No, most of them are born and bred Turks Islanders. We do because of the fact that the Turks and Caicos Islands is still an associate country of the United Kingdom. It means persons from the United Kingdom holding those passports, Scottish, Irish, English, can actually represent the Caicos. So you'll find that some of the persons who are members of the teams are immigrants who now live in the Turks and Caicos but maintain their Scottish or British, whatever, nationalities, and they are eligible. The other group that is significant is the people of Asian origin, which makes up a sizable number of, especially on the male side. So a lot of the players, their foreparents, whether it be parents or grandparents or great grandparents, were originally Asians who moved to the Turks and Caicos Islands, and over time they managed to get citizenship and then become eligible. And then, of course, more so on the female side, we have what you would call native TIs making up that team more so on the men's side.
Okay. And you don't do a lot of recruiting externally?
There's no population to recruit from that would bring you eligible players. So I think I've won already where the eligible players can come from.
Okay, cool, fair enough. All right, now back to Jamaica. I think I understand quite clear the happenings of what you're doing, and it seemed to be something that you'd have loved, and just continue to do what you're doing in that section of the Caribbean, and we're hoping to see some great moves from you. All right, just had to plug that in. All right, back to Jamaica. You're welcome. We made mention of the coaching being one of the, you'd probably say the primary, separate and apart from the raw material, which is the talent, would have been. But do you see other aspects that will enable our football to be developed in such a way that we can now become perennial World Cup qualifiers?
Well, 100%. There are. I think what we need is a strategic development plan, and I said that not knowing whether or not one exists at the moment, right? So there strategic development plan that will span minimum of 10 years. Ideally, I think we need something that spans a 20-year period, a 20-year span. And within the plan, there are a number of things that I personally believe needs to be part of the process. We talk about coach education already. The next big one for me is youth football. And although I have, as I say, started my journey in schoolboy football, the history will show that I would have written these things prior. One of the things that I did starting back in 2011 is I used to write regularly for the Observer, or columns that would have been published in the Jamaica Observer. Some of those articles, well, all of them, if you Google my name on football in the Jamaica Observer, you should be able to see some of those articles, if not all of them. So I have consistently followed the cue from Coach Jackie Walters, who I remember way back in, I think it was about 2004, at the ISA meeting, he was the first person I heard talking about we needed to find a way to create some kind of a elite league within the schoolboy football.
Right.
Because his argument was basically that the preliminary round was pretty much a lot of mismatches. So you had, I remember when I coached at States and Titchfield, there were a lot of games that was being won in double digits, and it was literally very a walk in the park for those teams. So Jackie Walters suggested that we should have like the 8 best teams from town, as in his own words, and the 8 best teams from country, and play against themselves in a league, which would make it better. So I took that idea and I came up with a suggestion that we should completely move away from D Cup and Manning Cup as we know it, and create a 3-tier structure where it didn't matter where the teams come from, but that you now have basically, I think I had it, 48 teams in each tier. And these was the numbers that was participating in the league each year. And then, of course, the idea was to basically extend the playing time, have teams playing against each other at levels that are similar, and then you do promotion and demotions. It never got much traction, even though even probably about a month ago, somebody called me, asked me if I can find that article and send back to them. I don't know what for, but I did send it. So I never really got much traction. And I have also written that I think schoolboy football is an hindrance to the development of better players.
Right. Sorry
from
to
that, I have stated.
Sorry to butt in because.
Sorry. Say that again?
Yeah, man. Sorry to cut you, but when you look at it, that plan seems like a very, very good plan. But should the entire aspect of that development of the players who has school to deal with their education or academic aspect of their lives, should the schoolboys league be, even though it over the years it would have been a pathway in aiding some development, but should it be used as solely the only pathway to development?
All right. So if you had not interrupted, I would have gotten to that, but notwithstanding.
My bad.
No, it's fine. It's fine. In fact, so this is where I was just getting to that point where I was saying that I have also stated that I think schoolboy football is an hindrance to our better players. So, like, after we came back from the World Cup qualifiers in 2015, I went on record to say that I don't believe that any player who has represented the nation should go back to playing schoolboy football. That is, if you have played Premier League, I don't think you should go back to playing schoolboy football. But to come around to the last question you just asked, though, the development of players cannot, in the modern era, be the responsibilities of schools. So whereas the school system served Jamaica and other Caribbean countries quite well in the pre-2000 era, in this 21st century, that emphasis now must be shifted to clubs and academies. And that is why I started out earlier on this point to say that youth football development. So when you take youth football development, there are several areas that we can look at. So we can talk about the technical development, which is coaching. And of course, that must be guided by a philosophy that comes through the coach education program as well. Then we talk about leagues and competitions. Right now, as I said before, I'm in Florida, and I have gone to watch some training sessions at one of the clubs nearby. And at under 10, we're talking about, I'm looking at these kids. Actually, I have a few clips on my phone. At 10 years old, playing with such confidence, such ease, such quality. And one of the questions I asked my guy was the average number of games the kids play per year. And he said upwards of 30 games. Upwards of 30 at 10 years old. If we were to go by FIFA research and studies, we know that for youth development, the average number of games is anywhere, depending on the age of the players, it starts about 35 games per year up to a maximum of about 60 games per year. Right? So if we don't provide competitions that allow that many games, that's one step back for us. Then we need to talk about supporting structures such as nutrition, proper physical training development, academic education as well, and social development. So there's just a lot of things that can be done and has to be done in the long run if we are going to develop the football in that way. I believe some of it can be done with minimal spend, and I believe also that packaged properly, we can interest a number of sponsors, and also the government, I think, should have a vested interest in supporting projects of this nature.
All right, well said, well said. So it begs me to ask this question now in terms of the whole development. Should the JFF play a more active role in terms of a national academy? Would that be some form of conflict of interest? Or even though the clubs aren't able financially to develop or put in a structure of an academy, which would be the better route to take? The JFF develop the academy, or the clubs trying as best as possible?
All right, so both questions are one and the same technically, because the clubs are affiliates of the JFF, and the JFF, like all other FIFA member associations, are the entity responsible for the growth and development of football within their own geographic space. In this case, we're talking about Jamaica. So the buck actually does stop with the JFF. No escaping that. Just the same as it stops with the Turks and Caicos Islands, with Trinidad, with Barbados. The buck stops with the member association. And there is funding support from FIFA for these projects. Not necessarily knowing the exact dollar value, but we know that there is funding support. As to how far it can reach and what it can do is another matter. Now, there are many ways to do things, right? In terms of national players, the JFF does need to have, in my opinion, an academy. I wouldn't use the word academy though. I think I would probably use it talent centers. So a national talent center is more in keeping with the thing. And in these talent centers now is where the JFF would identify players maybe 120, 150, 180 at each age group level and bring them in periodically for development. And these centers do not have to be So we already have the Captain Burrell Center, which can be the one national talent center. And then you can have regional centers, maybe one out in Montego Bay, one over in Clarendon, one out in Portland or St. Mary. Or you just do one that serves two parishes as a regional kind of a center. And then you bring players there. So, for example, you could bring left-footed players that are, say, 12 years old for a 2-day training, and you just work on probably technical development for those left-footed players playing as, say, left-sided wingers or left fullbacks, or you bring central midfielders and you do work with them at the different age group levels. I think that is a concept that is used in some jurisdictions. I know Argentina has something very similar to that for their under 15, the 17 selections. And it works, Germany, I know, has something similar as well. Now, the thing is, these things cost money, but they all have to be done at the highest possible cost, in ways that makes them prohibitive, right? Then now, the leagues and competitions, I believe that this must be facilitated somewhat within the clubs. Some things I don't think must be made optional, and the truth be told, one of the very first articles I wrote was about the number of clubs stroke teams in Jamaica. At the time when I wrote, depending on what your source was, you had anywhere between 450 to 600 clubs operating in Jamaica. That is just unsustainable. Anyway you take it, it's unsustainable. We don't have the population or the economics to support that. So in a real way, we don't need more than about 60 clubs in the country, right? I think 60 clubs in 2 or 3 tiers of football is all that we need that can be sustained in our country. So what the GFF and the other affiliates, I think, need to do is to create, what you call it again now, criteria for registration and licensing as a club. And this, I think, will then now force clubs to operate in a way that comes in line with those criteria. And of course, some of these criteria are not even the GFFs, if CONCACAF and FIFA. So once those things are properly ventilated and put out there, then instead of, I remember when I was living in St. Elizabeth, in the mountainside area, there was about 5 clubs operating in that area. All of them on a stretch of road, not less than about 3 to 5 miles long. And I was amazed. You had a club named Rasta, you had one named Burn Savannah. It was just ridiculous. So these are things that I think we have to find ways to create criteria that forces club to develop on a particular way. Then now, for example, every club playing in the Premier League, in my opinion, should also be playing youth football.
Right.
So let us say, for example, Harbourview playing Arnett Guards today, Sunday. Then probably the U18 teams of these 2 clubs could be playing each other simultaneous. Not necessarily at the same venue, but maybe at another venue. Right? Or they play each other on a Saturday and then the Premier League teams play on a Sunday. I don't know, whichever way that works best. I believe clubs at the lower tier should play maybe under 15, under 13, and so on. But at the moment, we have thinner spread of the resources in the country. So you talk about the human resource, you talk about the financial resource, the physical resources, just too thinly spread. So, like, again, if I refer back to that article, I think it was published in December 2011 or 2012, one of them. At the time, there was approximately $1 billion being spent in football in Jamaica through sponsorships and other forms of investments, right? Approximately. Now, if you take just the sponsorship dollars, and instead of you have company Y sponsoring a corner league down Portland or St. Elizabeth, And then you have a Division 1 and a Division 2 at Portland, and a Division 1 and a Division 2 down at St. James, and Division 1, 2, 3 at Westmoreland and so forth. If you were to take away all of that and then have just 3 tiers of national football, and you were able to somehow convince all of these sponsors to stay with the project, then what you would have done is basically make this slice of cake to each club, each competition much bigger. You understand? And that way, you can properly develop the clubs. So until we are able to bite the bullet, take the tough, hard decisions and make some of these things practical, not necessarily the exact way that I'm articulating.
Right. With some adjustment.
Yeah, but I'm sure there are other people out there with other ideas. Some maybe similar, some different. But something has to give. We can't keep going the way we are going and expect change and expect. Right. You understand? So we have to get to a place where we don't have 80 or 90 clubs in Casafa. Where we don't have 30 clubs in Portland and 60 clubs in Manchester and so forth. And these are just numbers being grabbed out at in here now.
Yeah.
But trying to paint a picture. So, like when I was doing these things, if you do it literally, I remember St. Elizabeth at the time, right? Each club would literally mean average. Each club would have just over 1,000 people to choose from in terms of their players, coaches, administrators, supporters. Now, when you think about that, think about it. In a practical sense, that 1,000 becomes less than 300, Because have a significant number of the population that are not interested in the sport any at all. Some are too old or getting up in age and no longer interested. Some are way too young to be of any value, put that in quotation marks, to a club. And so how do you sustain a club with 300 or less people being your base? It's just not practical.
Yeah, for real.
So for example, I think that should be one of the criteria when a club is being established in Jamaica. That you must define the geographic and the demography of which you are going to be operating. And if just like in parliamentary politics, a constituency must have a certain number of people living there, minimum, right? If you go down to the lower level, which is a parish council election, a parish council division must have a certain number of people living within it to be defined as a division. Then I also believe that a club should have a geographic space that has a minimum number of people living in it in order for you to be established as a club. So when you think about, say, for example, then Arnett Gardens and Tivoli are very close to each other, all right? But then the population is such that you can easily say, all right, these two clubs can coexist in the same space. Just like in the English Premier League, you have 9 of the 20 clubs coming out of London. So because that is a city center where most people live. But I don't think it should be just so willy-nilly that, Andrew Edwards want to set up a club and him just go to Manchester FA or Portland Football Association or Clarendon FA and then can register a club. And then 6 years down the road, the club cannot operate anymore because Andrew get fed up and him don't want to spend no more money. It shouldn't. It must have board of directors and business plans. All of these things should be criteria that shows a 10-year strategic development, for example. How you're going to develop the players in the basic school, how you're going to align the club to the community. And I think if we do these things with time, as I said before, if we're looking at it as a quick fix, we're making a mistake. So we need, in my opinion, a 10 to 20-year plan. Yeah. To bring.
So something has to give.
100%. I think even Stevie Wonder and Lionel Richie know that. They can clear.
You made some very valid points, Sir Edwards, and I just want to segue into one of them. Let's look at the whole structure of the Premier League in itself as well, because when you talk about the amount of clubs and all of these things, do you believe that a parish structure of the local Premier League would have been a more feasible one than what is happening right now?
All right, so to do it by parish, then we're talking about a kind of a franchise-based thing, right? That has its merits and its demerits. I personally don't think Jamaica economically is equipped for that. That's my personal view. However, what I believe is that instead of having all of these parish competitions and parish teams, etc., if we have, say, 3 tiers of national football, and let's say tier 1 is the Premier League, it has, say, 16 teams. Then tier 2 is the, let us call it League 1, right? League 1 has 18 teams, so that's 34. And then League 2 have 26 teams. And these are just numbers being thrown out, right? Now, let us say when we decide, all right, it's 60 clubs, and we already established all the criteria. We talked about some of them earlier in terms of your geography and your population of your club. Now, automatically, what that does, it means that all of these 60 clubs can come from Montego Bay, Kingston, and Clarendon. So you're going to have 2 or 3 clubs out of St. Thomas, 2 or 3 clubs at Portland, and so forth, so forth. Now, you already have a Premier League, and I know the intention is to grow the Premier League to, I think, 16 teams, which I think is fine. So let us say the level below that, you want to have 20 teams. We already have what they call Super League, right? So I think you can select the 20 teams from the Super League to make up tier 2. Provided that they meet other criteria that will be established, right? And then below that, you have your tier 3 based on the thing. Once you have that established, then you have your regular promotion and demotion. Now, that way, I think the rural parishes like my own parish, Portland, St. Thomas, and so on, can then develop stronger teams, because not just in terms of players, but in terms of management, in terms of the financial resources that can come into 2 or 3 clubs instead of 20 to 30 clubs or 40 clubs. You know, you can, the business community can now rally around and give them greater support to make them more sustainable. Then, in terms of the return on investment for both the club and the sponsor, if you have 3 tiers of national football that is always televised, whether live or delayed and streamed. Streaming now is a big thing, and streaming is quite simple. For example, in Jamaican context, it might be a bit expensive, but we can get like a VOCam 2, for example. For a VOCam 2 costs roughly, let's say, $5,000 for the camera, the software, and everything, the subscription for a year, right? And with a VOCam 2, you could stream live every game that you have. Right? If you want to go to something a little bit more sophisticated, you can go to like a pixel art setup. Which a pixel art setup can run anything from about, say, $12,000 up to 20,000 maybe. Right? Now, but just imagine, like in Sweden, every stadium is set up with a pixel art camera setup. Right? Which means that every single game played in these stadiums can be recorded, and then you share it. So it's not like Arnett Gardens record a game between Arnett Gardens and Reno going back home without the video.
Right.
Arnett Gardens is obliged to share. So that could become a part of a sponsorship plan, for example. So the coach's desk is the sponsor of pixel art cameras for all of the stadiums in Jamaica. And that gives the coach's desk preferential position in terms of sponsorship, advertising, on the live broadcast from these things, or the streaming from these games. You know, so you could, I think it could be packaged to a sponsor to say, all right, this is going to cost us, I don't know, let's say $100 million, and we want to do it over 10 years. So $10 million is the investment each year. I'm just throwing numbers out there.
Right.
So each year you're going to put up 1 camera or 2 cameras in a different stadia. Where these are AI, artificial intelligence cameras. So it's not like you need somebody to go up there. All you need somebody to do is log on to their phone or their computer
and control it.
And click start. You just click start and record. It's stream, right?
Right,
and then the level of sophistication, you can get the software package that allows you to have a commentator, that you allow fans to what do you call it, interact with the stream. You know, just like we're having this discussion and people could write into the chat and ask.
Right.
A man could give a clap or a man could give a boo or whatever. You know, but people could interact with the stream. And you could have, just like how your advertisement is running at the base, you could have a live stream running with Coach's Desk right through the entire 90 minutes of the game, because you're the official sponsor of the thing. Then before the game, you have 30 minutes of advertising space.
Right.
Maybe at halftime, that's a 15-minute window. You probably use only 5 minutes, because you might have 5 minutes for review of the first half and another 5 minutes for preview of the second half. So you might end up with just a 5-minute window for advertising. At the end of the game, you can have advertising again. And then, of course, because you're recording these games, they can be replayed as many times as, say, Flow or Digicel, Digiplay want to replay them, or any local cable TV station, as well as the free-to-air TV. Then they can play them because it's content. So the league would be developing content that can be used much more. Now, that has so many upsides, because automatically, if you're streaming your games live, it means that you know marketing your players to every corner of the world. Right? So I don't have to be in Jamaica to know, say, Kevin Minzy playing for Dumbe Olin is a star striker with 30 goals for the season so far. Right? I can stay all the way in Korea and sit down at my computer or whatever, or even on my phone. Right? And some of these streaming apps also allow you to have individual statistics and all of these things. So you can create your own heat map and all kind of stuff. So it's just so much that can go into it. But of course, if you have 600 clubs in Jamaica, then that does make it.
That's how. It's going to be too much to maneuver so many clubs. Exactly. And you know, Sir Edwards, one of the things that I believe with this thing will be very difficult. You see these plans, brilliant plans, you know. On paper.
I mean, some of it, quite frankly, I've written down on my computer or in my book. But
to get them off, to get them, you conceptualize it and you want to get it on the ground, that is going to be the difficult way. Because you see this whole thing of the community football that has been entrenched in our country already. It's going to be very difficult for a community to stay.
Kevin, you know that I really don't think that it is so difficult. I think the difficulty starts in our mind, that we don't, we are afraid of the challenges that will come. You know.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
But instead of focusing on the challenges, can we focus on the possibilities and the opportunities? So instead of me just coming to you and say, you know, we're going to change this and put this in the system, why don't I come to you and say, listen, instead of you going along the way you are going now, where your club is only getting in $3 million if you win every single title for the season, right? I want to present a situation to you where before you kick a ball, you already have $10 million in your coffers, and at the end of the season, you know, you are guaranteed this just for participation. So, say for example, like what we do in Turks and Caicos, for example, in our men's league, whatever the pot is at the end of the season, we have a ratio that shares that pot. So let us say the first team in the pot gets, say, 25% of the pot. Whoever finishes first, and the team that finishes last might end up with only 3 or 4%. It might not be a lot of money, but the incentive is there that everybody gets something. You understand? Now, if we go back to some of the things I said before, like if we have less teams and we keep all of the sponsors put in it. So if you had $1 billion in a pot, for example, which is the figure that I quoted earlier, right? Then $1 billion divided into 60 clubs, Reggie, we're talking about a lot much more money than all of the clubs see now. You understand? So just so much more can be done. So I think what we need to do is to dangle the types of carrots that will make people excited and want to come on board with this instead of thinking about the challenges. You understand? For the little man we sell peanut and thing at the match and them things there. Why instead of just selling peanut at one game on a Sunday evening, him can have game playing 3 or 4 days out of the week because you have youth teams playing, you have women's team playing, you have reserve team playing. You understand what I'm saying to you?
Yes, yeah.
If I'm a sponsor, instead of me sponsoring a league where the only 2 games alone are broadcast, I'm sponsoring a league where every single game played is broadcast, whether live or delayed. It's streamed. The entire world seeing it. If I am Grace Kennedy, that is much more attractive to me. It means that
Grace more Kennedy, people seeing the brand.
Exactly. So now Grace Kennedy can say, for me to give Arnett Gans $100 million is value for my money. Right? Then Arnett Gans with $100 million, instead of having three coaches on staff, can have 30 coaches on staff, so you can have coaches for your under 8, your under 10. You understand what I'm saying?
Right, through the ranks, right.
And instead of Kevin Minzy just helping out in bridging and Andrew Edwards helping out a bridging and not get Kevin Minzy can be salaried as a coach in a club. You understand? You're going to be a full-time coach or a part-time coach, but you're a salaried coach.
Right.
So these are some of the things that come to my mind when I think about developing the football. And quite frankly, I don't think it is as complex and complicated. Maybe I'm just a fool, but I don't think it is as complex and complicated as other people think. I think we're just not willing to do the work, the dirty work, to package it properly and to convince people that this can work and be better for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things is that I will always say this: not many people is willing to accept changes when they come. So that might be a little pushback, but these are brilliant ideas, Coach, and I do believe that once you say if it is packaged properly, then the island's football can turn around quickly, because we're running out of time. In terms of the local league that was played this year, what are your thoughts of it?
No, first of all, I think highest commendations must be given to the organizers, the clubs, the players, and everybody that were involved, the referees, everybody, highest commendations, because we didn't have football for more than a year. And I know from a distant place, I am aware of at least some of the challenges, if not all of the challenges. And I don't think that it was just amazing that we were able to get it done. Obviously, when you look at it, there are many things that we all can agree could have been better, could be improved upon. But I think that is for the people who are in charge to look at it and see what they can do better next time around. But hats off to everybody. Commendations and congratulations to Cavaliers winning the first title in over 40 years, or just about 40 years.
Yeah.
It just so fitting that we mentioning Cavalier toward the end, when Cavalier is probably the prime example of youth development in Jamaica right now. Operating, they're winning the Premier League with a very youthful team. They have won a lot of youth championships, not just in Jamaica, but internationally as well. So, Cavalier is doing it. Why can't other clubs do it?
I think it's this trust and the stick-to-itiveness, because Mr. Speed would have gotten a lot of, bashing why he's using young players in the league, and they have been consistent, and he believes in his product, and definitely he'd have stuck to it, and it pays dividend. You know what I mean? And I'm certain that others will see and follow in the footsteps that youth is the way to go.
Kevin, Rome was not built in a day.
Exactly.
The Africans say the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. The Chinaman said the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
One step.
We can't expect to flip a switch and things just change. We have to build a process and trust that process.
I guess that's one of the things with Jamaicans. So we tend to be a little bit impatient.
Very.
When it comes on to progress, and that is going to be one of our hindrances. And that's why I said with these brilliant ideas, the patience to something given for 10 years, persons will not readily, but they're not looking at the bigger picture and the future results from it, you know. So definitely. Which I see you in your Arsenal shirt. You're an Arsenal fan, man.
True and true. True and true. True and true. Unapologetic.
All right. So in terms of the Reggae Boyz now, you believe that they will qualify for the World Cup?
I believe that we have a very, very good chance.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's very difficult, you know, but I think should we win our next 2 games, which I think are winnable games, I think we will definitely be in for a shout, because I think if we get to 20 points any at all, which I think is really realistic, then I think we're going to be there or thereabouts. On that note, I think the government of Jamaica needs to find a way to ensure that we don't play behind closed doors, because like it yes or no, we are the only team playing behind closed doors, and it has shown that our results at home have not been as good as they have been on the road. And that's where my worry comes in, because 5 of the next 8 games that we have are at home.
Home games, yeah.
Right. So that is a bit of a concern for me. If we don't get people in the stadium, that could prove problematic for us. But I think we'll be fine though.
But coach, when you look at it though, we'll probably be in a better state without the fans, based on some of the reports that are coming out now, that points deduction and some slurs that were made by home fans and all of these things.
Yeah, I saw all of those things. But Kev, I really have to go now. Sorry to jump on it, but I have to wrap this up now. Yeah?
No problem. Basically, that's the end of it. We just want to give you the opportunity to say your final thoughts in a minute.
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. You know, I know I would have said a lot of things that might steer some thoughts and stuff. Some of it might be a little bit provocative as well. But I believe in having these discussions. I believe they are intended for the right reasons, and if they are such, then you know, hopefully it will stimulate other discussions, and hopefully in the not too distant future we'll see things happening that will bring us in the right direction. Thank you again.
Yeah, man, Sir Edwards. Thank you very much for tuning in, people, to the coach's desk. Here you have it. Andrew Edwards, technical director of the Turks and Caicos Island. He took the time out to be with us. He's away with his boys in Florida, or his team. Definitely appreciate it, sir. Thanks very much again, people, for tuning in. Until next time, pick up yourself, stay safe, and peace